Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to North Shore Live, Cooper's Corner. We are live. This is Wednesday, November the 4th, 2015. The days are going rapidly, and I hope that you're enjoying the weather that we're having. A little cool, but listen, better cool than snow or ice. This is November. Maybe we'll have the same 72-degree weather for Christmas that we've had about, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. It was wonderful. It was warmer than Miami Beach, Florida. Anyway, I hope everyone is well. I hope everything was good. I hope your not Thanksgiving. That's the next one up on the docket. Hope your Halloween was good. And that was a yucky day, terrible, rainy. That's true to cause. So, but no snow, so that was okay. And some didn't get trick-or-treaters, so we didn't get any trick-or-treaters. I think we had about 200 pieces of candy, and we didn't have any trick-or-treaters. So we are parsing out the 200 pieces of candy generously so we can get it all out of the cookie jar, because we didn't know where else to put it. No cookies, but candy. On this evening's program, we are so pleased to have with us a wonderful, knowledgeable, intellectual, compassionate, I don't know, whatever words that would describe such a caring person, Patricia Doyle. Pat Doyle comes to us from NAMI of, is it DuPage County?
It was NAMI DuPage.
NAMI DuPage. And NAMI is...
Metro Suburban.
NAMI is the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, and she is an instructor, and without me botching anything up, we'll let Pat talk about CIT, Crisis Intervention Training. Welcome to the program. My hands are cold, but I'm willing to shake. Okay. Oh, your hands are nice and warm. Wonderful. Okay. You are so dynamic. We were talking about Alice Byrne and how dynamic Alice is. And she's a registered nurse, World War II veteran, and she's still going strong at 96 because Alice has a mentally ill child. One of her 4 sons is ill. And she is so dynamic, constantly moving, constantly, what can we do? How can we help the society? How can we put this in legislation? I mean, she is moving. This is what you are doing. But you're doing it for whom? For what? What situation are you doing this from?
Well, as it refers to crisis intervention training, this program is designed especially for law enforcement. So it's a 40-hour program designed for them. And as you referred to Alice, I have a lot of hope, because in working at NAMI, I've met quite a few older people who, as you said, are just as passionate. Oh,
outstandingly.
And it gives me a lot of hope that I'll be still advocating well into...
Your hundreds. You're doing good. Don't worry about it. Now, you had a training session today. You had a training session, and where were you?
Well, actually, the form that I gave you, we were Monday in Kane County.
Kane County, okay.
For the Kane County Sheriff Department.
Yeah.
And they are actually still doing the CIT training. It will not end until tomorrow, or I mean, until Friday, I should say.
Friday. Mm-hmm. And maybe we can, I mean, you've filled me in on what they do, but maybe you can tell our viewers what is it? How does Pat Doyle work with CIT, or what is this crisis intervention team training? You come to the police department on a Monday morning, or you meet in a VFW post or wherever you meet, and then what happens from there?
Okay. As you have in your hands, there's a schedule for the week, and there's actually about 17 different instructors within that course of 40 hours. An arrangement is made through the mobile training unit to set a location. So in this past week, it was at the Kane County Sheriff's Department, and there's about 30 officers that go through the training during that week.
Now, and it's an all-day affair here. I mean, you know, this is like from 8 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. We're not just talking about you meet for coffee and donuts and talk about things. This is role-playing, role-acting instructions. Let them know what mental illness is, how it affects them, how it will affect the community, and how it affects the person who's having a meltdown, or because if police have to be called in, that's the situation, that this young person or whomever it may be is having a meltdown. Right. So what do they do at that point?
Okay, if you don't mind, Bev, can I just back up a little bit?
Go ahead, help yourself.
So I just want to kind of say where CIT started. It started in Memphis, Tennessee back in 1988.
Old.
It's old, you're right. And it strictly happened because the police had to respond to someone who was actually symptomatic, and he was shot and killed. It was justified, but Sam Cochran of the Memphis Police Department realized, you know, something could be done differently. And so at that time, back in 1988, they developed the first model called the Memphis model of the crisis intervention team. Now, NAMI, as you know, you're familiar with the organization.
Very well.
Okay.
Co-founder.
Okay. And now NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, they've changed their name over the time, but they're known to have state conferences and national conferences. And as we were talking about older women, Jill Edelman, who was a member of NAMI DuPage, went to a NAMI national conference and saw that there was a mental health court in Broward County, Florida. So she came back to the county board and wanted to start the first mental health court in the state of Illinois. The county kind of responded like, we don't have a problem with people with mental illness in our county.
All right.
So what they did is they worked with someone working on their master's and did the survey of over 800 officers. They sent out a survey in DuPage County, and over 554 officers responded. Wow. And on that response, it said that the officers, well, first of all, they were more on guard when they get a call on a mental health service. So they're on guard. 95.9% said they're on guard. 70% of the officers wanted more training in mental illness. 64.4% wanted a mental health court. Now that was back in 1999. They took that information in front of the county and they started the first mental health court. It took 5 years, from 1999 to 2004, and started the first courthouse. Now I came to NAMI after that period of time, but I have mentors. I have people that are older that are mentors to me. And Jill Edelman, not only did they want a mental health court, she wanted the police trained in crisis intervention training. So CIT was brought to the state of Illinois in the year 2003. And in order, there's something called the Illinois Law Enforcement State Training Board. Sometimes it's a mouthful. Now they get the money from the state of Illinois to fund these CIT courses throughout the state. And there's something put forth by the police called mobile training units, that the money for the courses go to the mobile training units in order for then us instructors to deliver the product to the officers. So I just kind of wanted to give you a little bit of background information. Unfortunately, right now, with the state of Illinois and the budget that we're in, a lot of this is already suspended or will be suspended shortly, because as you know, the budget is not resolved. Therefore, the Illinois Law Enforcement Standard Board does not receive the money. They cannot send it to the mobile training unit, and so officers' training will stop.
And that would be terrible because we've seen the progress and we've seen the success that is created. I mean, they're the officers that are trained for this mental health situation, going into a home situation or wherever, they're able to talk, to communicate, to gather information appropriately, not do an investigation. I mean, you've got someone out of control who doesn't even know that they're out of control.
The interesting thing is that officers, when they're first trained, they really are taught to take control of a situation. And in the case of dealing with someone that's symptomatic at the time, taking control can be misinterpreted by the individual as threatening. Therefore, sometimes the situation escalates, and then we have a person who's really in a medical crisis ending up in jail with charges brought against them. And that's why we hear about Tom Dart with the Cook County Jail. We have the sheriff in Lake County, the sheriff in Kane County, all knowing that our jails are filled with people who really are in a medical crisis.
And actually, that's what it is. It's medical. They're needing medication to be able to contain themselves, to be rational. If you take away their medication, they are totally irrational. And if anybody goes to visit Elgin, the hospital, you can see that they need to have medication, and you cannot force it on them. They have to be willing to take it, and that's a problem in and of itself. They don't force the medication. They have to agree to take the medication. They have a court right there at Elgin, a mental health court right there.
And some of the local hospitals, they too have a court at their hospital. The reality is our mental health code in the state of Illinois says, unless you're a threat to yourself
and society,
a threat to somebody else, or unable to care for yourself. And unfortunately, like we've seen in so many of these national incidents, many people know people are symptomatic, that they're not doing well, but the law says the officer's hands are tied. They cannot force anybody if that criteria for the mental health code is not met.
I'm just reading this brochure. This is really, I need to let the public know this, see this, because this is Pat's brochure. There we go. And in case anybody would need this, you can email Pat and at Pat, P-A-T, at visionforchange.net, and Patricia Doyle. This is really incredible because it says the facts. All communities face mental illness. In the United States, 1 out of 4 people are faced with mental health diagnoses. However, many are hesitant to seek treatment due to shame and stigma. This is another problem. Additionally, there are increasing lack of services available for those who struggle with mental illness, resulting in many individuals left without access to adequate care. Ultimately, those in the community, such as first responders, hospital staff, library staff, and clergy, interact with individuals exhibiting untreated symptoms or who might be in crisis, which is why proper training is necessary. I mean, you've got somebody in the library where everybody is so subdued and reading or whatever else, and all of a sudden they go into a psychotic rage. Somebody who knows how to handle this and has had the training will know what to do. But you've got a room full of people that are terrified. They don't know what to expect or how to react.
And Bev, the word terrified is truly, you're right on target with that. And simply, I believe that's because of what we see in our nation, what they hear on TV. So, for example, Hollywood portrays people who are psychotic as psychotic killers. When we hear about these national tragedies with individuals with schizophrenia, I don't think people really realize that 1 out of 100 adults have schizophrenia. So if we just factor that out in our own local communities, that's quite a high number. And if we all needed to be afraid of people with schizophrenia, we would be hearing about the news in our daily papers. Oh. And I think the sad part of all this is, from my experiencing at working at NAMI, is individuals that do have schizophrenia, when these national tragedies do come out, they kind of retreat. They want to hide because they don't want people thinking that is them. And the National Institute of Mental Health has told us that they're really more likely to be a victim of a crime as to be the perpetrator. And that is why our company is founded on people sharing their personal stories. Because when those police officers get to meet somebody who was psychotic and then see how well they're doing today, it gives them hope. But I will be honest and say, very few people will speak in front of the police because they're so embarrassed, maybe about the behavior that they did, scrubbing rocks at 2 in the morning naked. Who wants to go back to the police department and say, hey, that was me?
In the middle section of your brochure, it says awareness training. It's about educating your team. Vision for Change provides comprehensive, customized training programs to meet your needs and schedule. Our training will equip your team to recognize the signs and symptoms of someone experiencing a mental health crisis and provide tips to de-escalate the situation so the interaction has the best possible outcome. Some additional topics may include medications and their side effects. This is where I'm going to come to that with you. First-hand accounts of living with mental illness, what it's like hearing voices and audio stimulation, understanding self-injury, how mental illness impacts family dynamics, guidance on locating appropriate supports and services within the community, and additional topics upon request. Now, when I spoke about medications and their side effects, you've got a pamphlet there. So is this given to every officer, and how do they read that, or what do they do with that?
It is given to every officer. We've actually had requests after our CIT training to equip their department with more of these cards. And it's kind of twofold. If we were to look at this card under antidepressants, there's probably like 25 listed here, or maybe more. So when an officer goes out and somebody says, you know, I don't like the side effects, the officer can honestly say to them, there's so many more to try.
Which ones are you on? Yeah.
Right. Also, the number one question we get from officers regarding medication is how come they don't stay on their medication, right?
The meds.
Everybody thinks if they just stay on their medication. But after they learn some of the side effects, one of them I would just like to mention is one that my mother experienced. So my mom had bipolar disorder with psychotic features growing up. And she had the permanent side effect called tardive dyskinesia. And what that means is it's a constant moving of the mouth and slight protruding of the tongue. So that is what we teach the officers, that is a permanent side effect to the first generation of psychotropic drugs. There is nothing that can get rid of that side effect. And it's interesting because all of a sudden you can see an officer kind of like think of someone and they realize they can make the connection.
Oh, really?
The other part is helping people understand the cost of medications. One of the things I love to say to the officers is anything you see advertised on TV is the latest and the greatest. We don't advertise the 2007 car model that runs just fine, right? It's the 2016 loaded.
Oh, yeah.
Well, these new medications are loaded too, and they're loaded in their cost. Prior to affordable mental health care, we had one young lady who had come in on a particular medication, and when she lost her health insurance at work, that one medication was $600 a month. And I think when those officers' eyes kind of pop out and say, you know, that's more than a car payment, right? And then finally, when we also talk about the weight gain that some of these medications cause, I like to say if the pharmaceutical companies could find a way for people to lose weight on these drugs, they'd probably all be medication compliant.
You better believe it.
But who wants to gain 20, 40, 60,
Sometimes
80
this is true.
pounds
This
with
is
some
true.
of these medications?
This is true. This is true.
And so what we're trying to do is build empathy with them. And I think the most beautiful part of training the officers is that we know that 1 out of 4 of them, right in that room that we're training, have experienced this on a personal level.
Someone in their family or a next door neighbor, someone close to them that they may know. Now, the next portion says, speaking from experience, it's a different kind of training. At the heart of our trainings are compelling personal narratives. Vision for Change was established by Patricia Doyle, take a bow, sweetheart, whose mother was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Our board-certified instructors offer their own personal experiences, along with more than 30 years of combined professional and educational expertise. During the team's tenure at NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, the credibility earned by Doyle and her team resulted in local, state, and national recognition. They have been featured on national and cable television stations, national radio programs, and in magazines and newspapers, including the Chicago Sun-Times publication and the Chicago Tribune. Vision for Change currently offers training to first responders, professionals working in hospitals, libraries, faith-based organizations, and to the general public. You get up there and you talk about your mom. Is that okay to do?
I absolutely do. My mom was my best friend, and my first recollection was when I was 10 years old. She came into my bedroom in the middle of the night and she whispered into my ear that my dad was trying to poison me. And I remember kind of being really startled as a little girl, locking myself in the bathroom upstairs and thinking to myself, is my dad really trying to hurt me, or is there something the matter with my mom?
You could rationalize that at 10 years old?
I could, because I remembered my mom pacing between the kitchen and the living room. I remember her thinking she was getting secret messages from the radio and TV. I saw this very distressed look on her face of crying, and then all I know was the next day she was gone. And nobody sat us down, and we didn't talk about it then. Now, if I were really honest, I do have a strong faith, and I would say that I would have thought God had forgotten our family at that time. But I believe in my heart that God had a plan all along, and that Vision for Change is part of that plan.
Actually, this was, pardon me, this was the impetus for you then to take the ball and do something for those that can't even or
speak
know
for themselves.
how to handle what's going on. It was like, Pat, like she was coming to you and saying, to help me, or help others, help you see what she's going through. And this evidently didn't frighten you that much that you were terrified, but then threw you into another mode to be compassionate enough for other people. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah. My mom, I had the best mom. I would argue with anybody that I had the best mom. However, when she was sick, she was sick. Because we lacked the education, I didn't realize that my mom was, when she was symptomatic, it was because her medicine wasn't at a therapeutic level. So that anger, rage, and irritability that I saw directed at my father was really the medicine's not working for her. When she shared later on in her life with me that she was given what they called back then shock treatments, and how she was held down by 5 people, a bite plate inserted in her mouth and the shock administered, I saw the way the public responded to my mom when she was sick. They would roll their eyes, they would kind of laugh, and it hurt me so much because I loved my mom. So when my mom was sick, I just wanted people to help her. And quite frankly, it wasn't until much, much later in my life that I really learned the illness that my mom had. It was actually 21 years later that I learned that my mom had what was called then manic depression, which today is called bipolar disorder.
These little bits and pieces I'm going to read to you are very important because the people have signed their name on this, and they are people of stature. It says the evaluation from over 400 officers representing 25 departments were overwhelmingly positive and reflective how valuable the training was for them, professionally as well as a personal level. They recommended that the course be offered to all first responders, judges. Wow, that's the first time I've heard that. Judges, ER staff, and fire departments. This is by Bill Hayden. He's the chief of police of Addison, Illinois. The next one is, pardon me. I saw a transformation in my class when they met Pat and her team. After viewing their presentation, the students reported greater awareness, empathy, and improved understanding of mental illness. They have also increased my level of understanding of mental illness, and this has changed the way I practice nursing forever. Margaret Delaney, she's an RN, an MSN, a PNP, and a BC, nursing instructor. The next is, our staff feedback was very positive. All of the information will be useful in our work with the public. I would encourage staff from other libraries to conduct similar training sessions in their workplace. Joyce Hagen McIntosh, librarian and consultant. I mean, these are very important people and are seeing that their group, their area is being maintained with education above and beyond just the sheer fear tactics, because that's actually what we're hearing from years and years ago, 100 years ago. They're still reliving the same type of tactics without the understanding and compassion that's necessary. Now, they may not like the person for what the behavior is causing, but that doesn't mean that they can't assist. And that's what the first responders would be doing, is assist in helping them. Like if someone, got caught in a tree or fell down a hole or whatever.
It used to be thought that people were just weak. And really, honestly, it wasn't until the 1990s where the decade of the brain proved that this is a brain disorder, and we need to talk about it that way. One of my favorite things to say is, how we hear women being advertised, you have an overactive bladder? I'd like to say with bipolar, in that manic phase, they have an overactive brain. And I think of depression as like it's underactive. Like a thyroid can be overactive or underactive. I like to think of the brain that way as well. And I just want to encourage those people who do have a diagnosis that they would go out and share their story, because the number one way to change stigma is by individuals sharing their story.
The importance really of sharing a story is to let other people know that everyday people, everyone that you may meet, may have someone or some situation in their family that they've lived through. Some may be worse than others, and that's when you say, my life isn't so bad. Look what they're going through. They've, gone through a situation or lost a person to an illness that could, possibly have been prevented, but they didn't know how to take care of it. No one understood them. No one would give them the time of day. And I know what you're saying about what they thought about, just get over it. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Oh, well, give me a break here. There's no such thing as that anymore. This is truly a disease. It's an illness. It needs medication. You cannot learn without being helped or having some medication be able to help you. if you have migraines, if you have sinus trouble, if you have a heart disease, if you have whatever problem you might have, you need to have medication with a physician, a doctor. And this is the same way with a brain disease. In some cases, it can't be reversed. It may never be reversed. I remember when John Hinckley, who attempted to assassinate President Reagan, was put in St. Elizabeth's Hospital in D.C., and the psychiatrist, Thorpe, I think his name is, I'm not quite sure, he made the comment because he spoke before AMI. At that time, when we were still AMI, I'm co-founder of AMI, Illinois here. We used to we met downstate, these little farm towns. They were crying for help. You come from the big city. Help us. Tell us what to do. We have all these people. Anyway, editors of newspapers, I mean, it didn't matter who you are or what you are, is that you still had the same problem with a loved one that we had up north, and you were down in southern Illinois.
You know, it's so interesting that you brought up John Hinckley's name. I happened to read a book that was written by his parents, and what I'd really like people to know is there's always a story behind the story. You know,
Sure.
we see the national news,
Yeah.
and in the case of John Hinckley, his parents sought out every expert advice for him. And where they were maybe blaming the parents, the reality is they exhausted financially, emotionally. They tried to get him help. And the analogy I like to use is, if you can't help somebody until they're a threat to somebody else, it's like they're on the end of the plank, right? And now you're going to extend a hand. It's too late.
Yeah.
We need to back that up and get people help sooner, just like his parents tried to do, and then ultimately he was hospitalized.
But the doctor, I remember, he came and spoke before this, illustrious group that we were all in, and he said there's a third of those that suffer from the illness, that this may be a passing phase that may come and go, and that will be forever gone. May never enter into their life again. The second third is that medication will help, and that they need medication and can get on with their life as long as they have the medication. And the third is that there is no possible help for anyone of this nature, and they would probably have to be hospitalized with medication. And that's the three tiers of this situation of schizophrenia, because he said his sister suffers from schizophrenia, and he did research, and this was his finding, and that his own sister was a patient in St. Elizabeth's Hospital. So he spoke with heart and compassion and love. I mean, and I can imagine what they went through, having the parents having a child like this, and yet a sibling taking a stand and helping his sister and helping John Hinckley. I know we went through a terrible time with our daughter, who is now 42 years old, and we begged for help. The school district, I said, we have a large family. We had 7 children, and she was number 4 of the 7 children, and we took her to every doctor you can imagine. Every pediatrician, and Dr. Mendelson, who was a renowned pediatrician in Evanston, we took her to his home. He said, please bring her here. Let me see her. Let me talk with her. He said, oh, she is severely ill. And we're not talking about retardation, not. It's just that the chemicals in her brain weren't functioning appropriately. We took her to the University of Chicago, Dr. Bennett. We took her to Dr. Creighton. We did exactly what you said. We exhausted ourselves emotionally, financially, every way you can imagine. And my husband had a heart attack over this. And we were forced into a situation with a up-and-coming state's attorney who wanted to be a judge, Gail Tuller-Friedman. Hello, Gail, we're still here. Where are you? Who assaulted us verbally and emotionally in a courtroom. And the judge calling me a mother dog. We've got all the paperwork, these two worked in tandem to assault me. I'm a mother looking for help for her child. Why are you assaulting me? Don't you think I at least need credit for seeking help for her and not just letting her carry on? But the school district didn't want to hear of that. They wanted her out and away, because the school district then would have been responsible to place her residentially, and they at that time did not want to spend $75,000 for residential placement. So the best way to relieve their hands of a very severe situation, because she was going after the children in school, was to call in the police, call in DCFS, and have us charged with child abuse. And Gail Tuller-Friedman took my daughter and took her to the hospital, Highland Park Hospital, and had her x-rayed every bone in her body. They were trying to build and make a case. That wasn't the situation. She was mentally ill. This child would come to us in the middle of the night, standing holding a 10 or 12-inch knife, a butcher knife. We had to hide the silverware in the house. We had to hide the knives. She could have stabbed us with a fork. She could have put the house on fire. She could have done anything. She tried drowning herself in a pond. She assaulted herself, punching herself in the face. These bruises, of course, she went to school with. I wasn't hiding them. What could I say? We didn't do any of that. But Gail Tuller-Friedman, I hope you're listening, Gail, because Kimmy now is 42 years old, and you could have helped her then, and you didn't do a thing. You did nothing but hurt her and hurt a family. And she was taken from us at the age of 7, and she's never been home since. She is 42 years old, and Gail Tuller-Friedman did this to us, a family who went for help and guidance and whatever you can imagine. And I think she thought that this was going to win her a collar or stars, that she would become a judge here in Lake County. Well, she didn't become a judge, and she dropped out of the state's attorney's office. But my daughter is still alive somewhere in Chicago, and we've not really had contact at all with her, really. And they made a child 7 years old. Gail Tuller-Friedman put her in a halfway house in Chicago. And at the ripe age of 8, she was part of a double murder. My daughter was part of a double murder, and with one of the girls in the group home, before and after the fact of killing 2 people, Benjamin and Sybil Gibbons in Skokie. And I attended that court 5 days a week, 8 hours a day for 6 weeks, and the courtroom was packed. Was absolutely packed. You had sketch artists and everybody. Maybe 300 people were there, and I said, I have to go. I have to see what she was doing, because this very girl, Jacqueline Gibbons, who now must be in her late 50s or maybe early 60s, was sharing a room. She was my daughter's roommate. And this is what they used to put all these girls together who were really mentally ill. They were severely mentally ill and not retarded. And I have to constantly say that, because when I say severely mentally ill, they think that they can't feed themselves. That's not the case.
And honestly, Bev, a lot of people get that mixed up. Intellectual disability
Yes.
versus mental illness. And you can have crossover.
Yes.
But oftentimes people are brilliant that have
True.
one of these illnesses.
But
can I just clarify
Sure.
something? So your daughter, when she was sent to this home, she was how old?
She was 7.
And then the person that actually committed the murder.
18.
So they had an 8-year-old in with an 18-year-old.
That's right.
And, you know, I've heard nothing as national as that must have been at that time, as far as the news goes. But your generation, the way people were treated, I've heard people referred to mothers as schizophrenic mothers. You know, they were the refrigerator moms. They didn't hold their kids enough. They didn't love them enough. And like you said, you have 7 kids.
Yeah.
So, you know.
She went after our youngest at that point, was 3 months old, and Kimmy was 5, and she attempted to suffocate her with a pillow. Had I not come into the bedroom in time, because the girls all shared one room, the boys shared a room, girls shared a room, and we had our room, she would have killed the baby. And, you know, the loss of a parent losing a child is terrible, but it could have been prevented, and I could never have lived with myself had I not been there at the time. In the intervention, divine intervention, God stepped in and said, you need to go there, check, see what's going on. I had no idea. And Gail Tuller-Friedman would have been happy to just let her go, and she made some very snide comments that the parents are effing up, but the kid is normal. I mean, give me a break here. The kid is normal? What does she know? I lived with this child. We lived with her. She didn't know anything. She was just doing a political stunt to become a judge. And who in their right mind would have voted her in to be a judge after we came public with this? And the court had their own psychiatrists. And they could not believe what they were finding. And they sent her, Pat, to 54 placements. 54 foster placements and residential placements. I mean, it's hard enough to acclimate if you just go to your aunt's house for a weekend or an overnight. 54 in the state of Illinois, out of the state of Illinois, anywhere that would take her. And the prerequisite is that she had to have a psychiatric. And they wouldn't take her unless she fit the bill of the psychiatric. And believe me, she was severely and is severely mentally ill. And, you know, to this day, I think Gail Tuller-Friedman, had she not been as arrogant a person as she is, would have seen, and she herself is a mother. I mean, I'm a mother. If you're having a problem with a child, if the child has polio,
you know what, Bev?
Are you not compassionate?
Yeah, I just think the lack of education. And
she's an attorney. She's a state's attorney. She has no education?
Well, to be honest,
no. No.
Yes. In the area of these neurological brain disorders or what's mental illness, again, I think just your generation, I don't know how you lived through that. I don't know how you prayed through that.
My husband had a heart attack.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to take care of these kids, make a living for the family. I mean,
well,
it was terrible.
Yeah, and let me just say now, remember we talked about the 1990s being the decade of the brain?
Yes.
So now the National Institute of Mental Health has determined that of all the adults that have mental illness, 50% of them reported signs and symptoms by the time they were age 14. So your daughter would have been in that.
I told everybody early on. I said, even when they delivered her and I held her in my arms, I said, wasn't a new mother. This was my 4th child. I said, there's something wrong. She's not bonding. There's something very wrong. And every time I would tell this to the court system or this Gail Tuller-Friedman, she'd say, you're over-reporting. You're over-reporting. what do you mean by over-reporting? I'm just telling you that there's an illness here. There is a symptom. I don't know what this is. I've never experienced this. The other children don't have this. What is this? What is this? And, you know, my husband and I were looked down upon as evil, and, you know, the school was happy that they could get rid of her, and then the principal and superintendent, they finally left. They left. They couldn't handle it because they knew the wrongdoing that they did. And Public Law 94-142 states that every child has the right of education until the age, and at that time it was 21. But regardless of their disability, they were entitled to an education. And here, they couldn't wait to get her out of the school so they wouldn't have to educate her because I don't know. They just didn't want to spend the money. But it was okay to destroy a mother, a father, and 6 other children.
And I think that's why you started AMI.
You better believe it.
In the state of Illinois.
And loud and clear.
Because of that suffering. And as a result of all that, look at NAMI today. Just in the state of Illinois, there's somewhere around 31 affiliates. So there's many people that have experienced what you have. And I think there would be one other thing I'd kind of want to clarify for the audience. Although we don't know the cause of mental illness, and in my case, it's genetics, but the reality is, even if you're not the 1 out of 4 families that have been touched by this, should there be a trauma to the brain, a car accident, a fight, you hit your head, you too may be diagnosed in the future. So these illnesses have the ability to impact everybody. And again, I'm just going to say, I think your generation, I will say there's still residual of that where some parents have to lose custody of their children in order for them to still get state services, and that's happened in different states in our nation. But I will say, because I feel the feistiness in you, and the anger and the frustration. Because
it hurt so bad.
Yeah.
You carry a baby for 9 months, and you know something's wrong. If the child had cerebral palsy or had cancer or whatever, I'm a Rotarian. My husband is a Shriner, 32nd degree Mason, a Shriner. The Shriner Hospital, we checked. We even went to the Shriner Hospital. Is there someone that could help? Someone that nobody knew how to handle the situation except destroy the family, tear the family apart.
The blame. It was the blame game. It was the blame game.
And send the child to 54 placements, and she didn't know where she was going. I mean, she put a dog in a microwave oven in somebody's house. She caused such terrible havoc with other people you wouldn't believe.
And you know what's interesting? When President Kennedy had the vision, when the new medications came out in the 1950s, and he had the vision that people need to be in the least restrictive environment, and many people were in our state hospitals, then he was shot and killed, and so his vision was that people would be accepted into their community. And you know what? We're still fighting that today, for people to be accepted into their community.
How many years?
It's been 50 years, 50 years. And I'm not entirely sure of what Vision for Change can do, but we're going to do our best, just as you did with AMI.
All I know is that, Pat, you're a strong personality, and that's a blessing. It really is a blessing. I know I will never give up the situation of what happened with me. We had no idea this was going to befall our family. I never took any kind of medication. I even had my obstetrician said, I said, well, what if I don't feel well? Just take a drink of water. Don't take any aspirins. Don't take anything. We lost our 14-year-old nephew to Reye's syndrome, and that was my brother's son, his only son, and from 2 children. And he took aspirins, and within 36 hours, he passed away. They said they thought it was the flu, but it wasn't the flu. It's Reye's syndrome, and so much fluid is built up in the cranium that he drowns in his own fluid. At 14 years old, we lost him. There was so many things happening in our life. Kenny's mother passed away. My father, 6 months later, he passed away. We didn't have time to grieve because we were in such a state of shock of what Gail Tuller Friedman here in Lake County. I'll say her name forever because that's what she did to us. And we lost a child. We lost a child. And she lost a family, a mother, father, 6 brothers, grandparents, and being placed in individual homes who don't even know or care about her, other than the fact that they were being paid by the state to care for this child who they never told was mentally ill. They never told the people that they brought this little girl to their house. They never told that she was mentally ill.
Because it sounds like you had the problem.
It was the mother.
Yeah.
Let me at him. It was the mother who had the problem, see? And that's what the court said. And the judge is still here. Emilio Sante, you ought to know who you are. I mean, these people live in my community. We see them shopping. We see them at the Walgreens. We see them everywhere. And they can't face me. They can't face me because they know they did wrong, and they're living with a situation that they created. Had they had more compassion for a child and understood what the parents were going through, that would be different. But no parent wants to wish their child ill or incapacitated. Why would you want to do that? That's not even a rational thing. And raising a large family, you have to be rational. Very rational.
And have a lot of patience.
And cook a lot. Cook a lot.
Well, it's so obvious to me how much pain is still there. And it's like an open wound for you.
Never will go away.
Yeah, and I can't imagine because I'm not in that place. But I do know from founding people at NAMI, which are my heroes, because they were in the dogfight, kind of. And I just want them to know that we're going to carry the torch and that we will make a difference.
Good.
And we want communities.
Yeah.
You know, I will just say this. When I worked at NAMI DuPage, we would train that library, this police department, that fire department, this church. But what we need to do is wrap around the education and go deep with the community. And that's exactly what they're doing in Park Ridge with this program called Beyond CIT. They're actually, not only are they training all their officers because they got a grant from the Department of Justice, but now they're taking that grant money and they're going deep. They're educating their community. And I just look forward to positive results. And you know, maybe we don't have to wait for a lot of tax money. I mean, we certainly need tax money, but there's so much more the community can do together. And where you experience the fracture of a community, where they tore people apart with this because of a lack of education and maybe personal gain, but I don't think I understood the benefit of a town and a community, because we have all these big stores that pull us away.
Sure.
But if we can educate one another, I have this vision, and it is a vision for change, and I do want to see people respond compassionately. And there is a smaller percentage, like your daughter was in, that are that severe, that need so much more intensive services. But for a lot of people, they live well in recovery. And so that's the message. We want those that are sick to get help and those that are able to recover to do that as well.
We don't have much time left, but I want to congratulate you again and again for your stick-to-itiveness, for your ability to see that others need help out there, for your wonderful eye on the communities and your helping hands, and to let the first responders know that they don't have to go into these situations unarmed without the education that they need. And I would venture to say that CIT, Vision for Change, and Pat is doing a marvelous job, and if you want to connect with her, she's the founder and the president. And you've heard from the chief of police out of Addison, Illinois, and the librarian and the nursing instructor. These are all people that understand where Pat comes from and are willing to help.
And Bev, if you don't mind me just adding,
Sure.
It was you seeing that NAMI Barrington on November 17th at 7 o'clock at their annual meeting, we're going to be discussing CIT just like we are today. And so if we can encourage the public, please come out. Let's learn more about CIT,
Great.
get more officers trained. But it was your eyes on that flyer talking to Mary Rose at
Yes,
NAMI Barrington,
that's right.
which brought me here. So I really want to thank you and your program, and I want to thank all the officers out there who, quite frankly, the community calls on them when we don't know what to do.
That's
and
right.
we expect them to be experts at everything. So
That's
we've
right.
got to equip them and thank them
Yes.
afterwards for
Well,
what they've done.
I can tell you Highland Park is number one. We thank them always. We are so appreciative. When you are in need, they are there, and the community wants to stand behind you always. So please feel free to connect with me or whatever, and feel free to connect with Pat Doyle. Her number is 630-234-7477, or you can communicate with me here at Bev Cooper, Cooper's Corner, yahoo.com. We'll put you in touch with her. But Barrington,
NAMI Barrington,
and November 17th.
at 7 o'clock.
And where would that be?
I have to be honest, if people would Google NAMI Barrington,
Okay,
their
they'll get
annual
the-
meeting,
yes.
and the whole 2-hour focus will be
Yeah,
on crisis intervention training.
Great.
And we need more members at NAMI.
And I'm sure that Gail Tuller-Friedman, who has no education, I don't care what degrees you have no education in this phase of life that we've gone through. You could stand an education for sure. You could stand being in jail for sure. I'm so angry, and she deserves it. The hurt that she caused and the pain, suffering. It was a crime against a family. That's what it was. Unduly unnecessary, a crime against a family. Okay, well, I think that's about it. If you have any questions about this program or any of the other programs, please feel free to contact myself or Pat Doyle on regarding CIT, crisis intervention training. Very important. We'd like to have you back, Pat, as soon as you give that little oratorio on November the 17th. So thank you for watching. Thank you for allowing us in your home or your place of business. Have a very pleasant evening, a very safe week. See you next week on North Shore Live, Cooper's Corner. Good evening.